Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Gopi Jana Bala Girivanadari Jaya
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Bala Girivanadari Jaya
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Jasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Banachari
Natera Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Banachari
Yamunatera Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Jaya Gopi Jana Bala Girivanadari
Jaya
Jaya
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Bala Girivanadari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Banachari
Natera Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Banachari
Yamunatera Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astataraswata Sisi Mother's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astataraswata Sisi Mother's Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvi Sesa Sanivari Paskacha Desatarni. Panchakopa Tirubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Good evening everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. We had, well, I guess we did get here on time. We had a little accident. There was an accident on the highway, slowed us down. But anyway, we've made it here. So as Prabhu was saying, I traveled with Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya there from 1972, from about mid-1972 until about mid-1975. So I went around the world with him 4 times over that time. You know, Prabhupada went around the world. Prabhupada himself says 15 times he went around the world in 10 years. Which if that's all he did, that was an amazing feat. As I see now, at this age of 74 years old, Prabhupada started in 1970. So over the next 10 years, so those 15 times, he was in his 70s through that. So that in itself is quite an accomplishment. Of course, we know during that time, he also opened up 108 temples, installed deities in dozens and dozens of temples, did the installation ceremonies himself, translated over 60 books from the Vedic scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, other books. Made some 5,000 devotees during that time. So he was very, very busy. And traveling with him, one thing that amazed me so much was he made it look, also answered letters every day. Some 25 letters a day would come in. And he responded to all those letters, questions from his disciples and others. And at the same time, of course, everything he was telling us to do, he was doing it. Chanting his japa, he was reading his books. I mentioned this is, I think, maybe my 5th class or so since coming here. A few days ago, arriving here. We arrived here, I think, on Thursday. But he made it look so simple. But he was only sleeping 3 hours a night. That was one thing that also made it possible. The translation work he was doing would begin around midnight. Prabhupada said he was taking rest at night, 10:30, and then he would get up midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's when he was translating Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and other books, was very early in the morning. Because then as the sun was coming up, he assumed the regular day, just like all the devotees in the temple were doing. Attended the class. Of course, he was giving the class. He was there for greeting the deities every morning. And then he was, in the morning time, he would see wherever he was, whatever temple he was, he would bring in the devotees, see how everything was going on in the temple, give instructions to everyone, help train everyone up. So all this, so he could be spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world. And the other day, we had anniversary of his sannyas ceremony. We know Prabhupada took sannyas. Do you know what year that was? Prabhupada took sannyas? I believe it was 1959. I think 1959. So he took that from one of his godbrothers. And another one of his godbrothers was there. He became, within our society, our ISKCON society, quite famous. He was a Bhajananandi. We say there's 2 kinds of devotees. You have Bhajananandi and a Ghostananandi. So the Bhajananandi, they do bhajan, not preachers. And the Ghostananandi, Srila Prabhupada traveling all around the world preaching. So one that we got to know of in ISKCON back in those days was his godbrother, and we know him now as a Kinchana Krishnadas Babaji. He was a Babaji. And there's a story about him very early on when he went to the temple, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Mat, Prabhupada's godbrother, Kinchana Das Babaji. So he went to the temple, and all he wanted to do was chant, chant japa. So in the temple there, some of the other devotees, they became a little perturbed, a little upset, because their process there in the temple, they were chanting 64 rounds. He was chanting more. He was chanting all day and all night, and wasn't going out preaching. So some of them, they complained to their spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and said, he's just doing like this. And of course, Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said, that's all right, you leave him be. Later on, in the 70s, when we were going to India, we got to hear him chant bhajans, see him chanting. I got to meet him a few times. When Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, he would come to Vrindavan, this Krishnadas Babaji. And he was he was about the size of Prabhupada, a little shorter and thin, but very, very jovial. And I saw him the first time when he came to Radha Damodar Temple when Prabhupada was there during Kartik, 1972. And that was the first time I met him. I didn't meet him personally, but being in the room, Prabhupada's sitting room, he came into the room, Krishnadas Babaji, and Prabhupada, they just hugged one another and laughing and talking in Bengali. But you could see they had very close relationship, very, very sweet relationship. So he was there when Srila Prabhupada received sannyas. That in itself, Prabhupada would tell about his taking sannyas. As we know, Prabhupada was grahasta, married, I believe, in around 1920 when he met his spiritual master. When Prabhupada met his spiritual master in 1922, he was already married and had a child. And it was that time his spiritual master said, you preach this message in the English language. So anyway, even into the 1950s, Prabhupada, he said he had business. He said he was, astrologically speaking, Prabhupada said he was supposed to be very, very wealthy. And he did quite well in business. He was in pharmaceuticals. And he did very well, but towards the end there, everything just went away. And Prabhupada was telling that story one day in Los Angeles temple, New Dwarka. And he was saying how Krishna took everything from him. He also said that was a blessing. He said when you're favored by Krishna, he'll take everything from you. He took everything from Srila Prabhupada. So for him, that was also difficult. It's not something that came easily. And the thought of taking sannyas, Prabhupada said he never even thought about it. But then he had dreams, one, another. His Guru Maharaj appearing to him, indicating he should take sannyas. I was with him when he told that story once in Los Angeles, and he was describing it. And he said it was horrible, the idea to give up everything, to renounce everything and take sannyas. And I remember when he was saying it, the devotees, they were taking it very lightly, almost like it was something funny. And Prabhupada said, no. He said it was horrible. He said, but I could see it's what I was supposed to do. So finally then, a little bit later, he was having his sannyas ceremony. There was another godbrother, much older godbrother, he also took sannyas at that time. But at the ceremony, Krishnadas Babaji was there as well. And Prabhupada was sitting by the fire, and all the mantras are going on, the chanting of the different mantras and everything. And Krishnadas Babaji told some of our godbrothers how Prabhupada was chanting japa. And he saw Srila Prabhupada chanting japa, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And Krishnadas Babaji said that he could understand at that time that Prabhupada would be the person who was going to spread the Maha Mantra all around the world, because he could see the faith that Srila Prabhupada had in the Hare Krishna mantra. So that was something that was also very special. He noted that Prabhupada, everything else was going on, he was chanting Hare Krishna. And of course we know we're having that celebration here this weekend, right? 60th anniversary of Prabhupada coming to America, putting his lotus feet down here in this country way back 60 years ago for the very first time. Pure devotee of the Lord placed his lotus feet in the Western world here. And as Krishnadas Babaji mentioned, Prabhupada had complete faith. You know, there was a story Prabhupada told me a long time ago. It was around 1974. I was giving him massage. It was one evening time. And Prabhupada started relating stories about his childhood. Prabhupada would sometimes tell stories when he was young, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And of course at that time, it always seemed his father was there. He was always with his father. Prabhupada credited his father for being the force, his very first force to help him as a pure devotee. He said, my father was a pure devotee. And his father, whenever he would see any sadhu, he would always say, you please bless my son, that he becomes servant of Srimati Radharani. He said he never asked for anything else, my father. He never said, you please bless me that my son will become big businessman, make a lot of money, do all these things, have a nice family, nice children. No. One desire, he said, you please bless him that he'll become servant of Srimati Radharani. And also said other things. The one evening while I was giving massage, he would recollect. And Prabhupada's memory was quite amazing, something I couldn't even imagine. He spoke how when he was young, he said some of my first memories was being in the arms of my older sister. His older sister, I don't know what her age was, he didn't mention, but he said she was holding me. He said I was probably 6 months old. So you can imagine to have a memory going back that long. I always think, my first memory, I was about 4 years old, and my sister fell on me and broke my arm. So that was my first thing I can recollect. I was 4 years old. But anyway, Prabhupada remembered all the way back there. And so he would tell these stories from his young childhood. And one of them that he told was how in the evening, his father, he said his father, whatever he wanted, whatever Prabhupada wanted, his father was always ready to do it. His father was ready. And it was one evening, Prabhupada said, I told my mother, I want puris for dinner. So now this was late at night, like 9 o'clock at night or so. Prabhupada said, I want puris. And his mother said, no. She said, I'll make you muri, puffed rice. That is no salty preparation, puffed rice and peanuts. And Prabhupada, from the very beginning, Prabhupada, what he wanted, he was going to get. And even as a child, he said, I want puris. And he said, my mother said, no, I'll give you puffed rice. So then the third time, he looked at his mother and he said, I want puris. And then he said, my father said, if he wants puris, give him puris. And then he said, perhaps my father knew. And that's how he left it. Of course, me sitting there with him could understand what he was saying. Perhaps his father knew that he was going to be that person to fulfill the predictions of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his spiritual master, and the very predictions of Lord Chaitanya himself, that this Hare Krishna mantra would be spread to every town and village. So Prabhupada was that person. And Prabhupada at that time felt that my father knew. And of course, perhaps that's why his father was gracious. Whatever Prabhupada wanted, he would get. So one of those things, Prabhupada would tell how he would go out with his father, shopping. Always talked about how he was with his father. And as he said from even that story, you could understand his mother was the disciplinarian. His father, he was more lenient. And he told in our very first Gurukula, which was Dallas, Texas, he was giving class one day. Of course, the teachers were there, the ashram teachers, the classroom teachers, and the children were there. And Prabhupada was saying, when I was young, he said I had tutors. He had said he had a few tutors. So one teacher would come to the house, and he would teaching Prabhupada how to play mridanga and harmonium. And then the other teacher was, Prabhupada said, teaching me the ABCDs. I was teaching him his normal school-type activities. And he said, my father, he would bring in his tutor first, because his interest was always with Prabhupada, was that he become great devotee of the Lord. His mother, he said, wanted him to be a barrister, lawyer. That was her interest. But the father always, his idea was simply he would be devotee. Know how to be nice Vaishnava devotee, as his father was. He said his father had a shalagram shila, and he had a little thing he would hang around his neck, and he kept it in a little silk case. So the shila he would take everywhere. Anyway, one of these shopping trips, as they were going, a little store. If you ever seen how the stores are there in India, there can be little shops all over, up and down every street. So Prabhupada saw some toys, and he saw guns, toy guns. And Prabhupada told his father, get me a gun. His father complied right away, bought him a gun, and Prabhupada had the gun in his hand, and he was looking at the gun in his hand. Of course, in those days, it wasn't plastic guns. Must be metal gun. And he's looking at the gun in his hand, and then Prabhupada looked at his other hand. There's no gun in his other hand. And he looked at his father. He said, I need a gun for this hand. And at that time, even his father objected. I never heard Prabhupada tell so many stories about his father, but his father always was whatever he wanted, he got. But Prabhupada said, he objected and said, no, you have a gun. But Prabhupada's determination was there from the very, very beginning. Without that kind of determination, what's the question he would have done, what he did? Establishing temples all around the world, making Vaishnavas all over the world. Not a simple task. But that same determination was there even when he was just a young boy. So Prabhupada, of course, said, no, I need another gun. And of course, like the mother, father, same thing. Said, no, you have a gun. So for the third time, I tell you, when you hear stories 3 times is very special. Nothing ever goes past the third time. So again, Prabhupada said, I want a gun. And his father objected, "You have a gun." He said, I became very upset. And he said, he said, I laid down on the ground. He said, and started banging my hands on the ground. What do we call it? He had a tantrum. Yes, he said he had a tantrum. Started banging his hands on the ground. And he said, I banged my head on the ground. Then he looked at me. He said, "You see this scar?" Prabhupada had a scar on his forehead. He said, "That scar is from that time." So this was our Srila Prabhupada. Wouldn't take no for an answer. So he was always the same with everyone, always. It was 1973 when Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, 1974. And of course the BBT, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, was there, which they were the trust that was printing all of Srila Prabhupada's books. And it was on one of those, it was a very famous morning walk. Prabhupada had translated the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, and no books were there. None of the, not the Adi Leela, not the Madhya Leela, not the Antya Leela. 17 volumes of books, they were behind. And Prabhupada said, "How can I be inspired to translate?" He said, "You're not even producing them." Like with the Bhagavatam, as soon as he would finish a canto, sometimes there would be 3 books in one canto, 2 books. As soon as he would complete one section, he expected to see that book printed within a month or 2. And generally that was happening. But the translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was in Bengali, was much, much quicker for Srila Prabhupada. So he had finished the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there was only like 1 book that had come out, that had been in print. So there's one morning walk. Prabhupada said, "How am I to be inspired to translate if you're not printing?" And he asked the head, the manager of the BBT, he said, "How long will it take for you to get these books printed?" And he said, "Well, Prabhupada," he said, "this takes," at that time, of course, there were no computers. This is 1973, 1974. Everything was done simply by hand. You had all the typesetting had to be done. You had the diacritic marks had to be put on everything had to be done manually. So he gave Prabhupada a figure, something like 6, 7 months, maybe even a year. And Prabhupada said, "No." He said, "I want it all done." He said, 2 months. Hare Krishna. And at that time, Rameshwar Prabhu, he said, "Prabhupada, that's impossible." What did Prabhupada say? Who knows that? Very famous. Impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. 2 months later, 17 volumes appeared. This was the potency. It wasn't the potency of us. It was the potency of pure devotee for his desire to be fulfilled. We were in Chippewa some months ago, and they had copies of Prabhupada's passport. You remember? Prabhupada's passport. The passport that his very first passport when he came to the U.S. And on the passport, in that section in the Indian passport, it said, "Are there any physical marks? Any physical marks?" And on the passport it said, "Scar on the forehead." And I was sitting with Radhanath Maharaj that day. In Vishaka, we were there. And I looked and I said, "That's it. That's the scar." That's the scar Prabhupada said was on his forehead from banging his head on the ground. So this is what it takes, the determination to become Krishna conscious. This is what kind of determination it takes to spread the holy name. Never take no for an answer. Prabhupada showed it. If you have a pure desire to serve Krishna, Anything can happen. Nothing is impossible. We see that sometimes in our travels. Things you think it just can't happen. Anything can happen. It was just by Srila Prabhupada's desire himself. He had a desire in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. I believe it's about the 34th chapter. Prabhupada mentions there that a devotee had a desire for a temple to appear in Vrindavan. This is our Krishna Balaram Mandir. He doesn't say, I had a desire. Prabhupada always had humility. Never said he did anything. Everything he would say was the grace of his spiritual master. And he would even say it's by his disciples who his spiritual master had sent to assist. He always gave the credit to others. But he said that a devotee had a desire for a temple to be there. And in that way, the temple manifests. That same desire over the next 3 days this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's why I've given some classes here, but I've never really touched on Srila Prabhupada's arrival, because you're going to hear a lot about it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from so many of my god brothers, god sisters, and others about Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America. But just coming here, just getting his passport, getting a visa to come to America, he needed police clearance. They won't let you leave India unless you can prove you don't have any debts to anyone. You have a police report. They call it a police report. So there were so many different obstacles, so-called obstacles, that had to be cleared before he could come to America. We know it was the Agarwal. It was Mr. Agarwal, the father of Mr. Agarwal in Butler, PA. He was the one, he met Srila Prabhupada. And he told Prabhupada that he would get his son to sponsor him. Prabhupada didn't even know about it until one day he had his sponsorship from this Mr. Agarwal in Butler, PA. Because you couldn't come, You know you can't come here unless you have a sponsor, right? Coming from India, unless you have a sponsor, there's no question of just getting a visa and coming. You have to see that you can take care of yourself. Someone's going to take care of you. Police report has to be filed. So many things. So all these things had to happen. And then, of course, it was 1965. Prabhupada was sannyasi. Literally had nothing. We heard stories just before his coming, how he mentioned his home. Even in his passport it said his home was Vrindavan and his office was Chippiwada. Prabhupada spent months at a time there at this temple. That temple also was acquired by ISKCON some years ago with the aid of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. So we were at that temple. It's now ISKCON temple. A very important part of Srila Prabhupada's life, of Srila Prabhupada's preaching, this temple. Prabhupada had a little room up on the first floor. And his room was literally right on top of the deities. You know, if you know anything about altars and deity worship, I don't know what it's like here, but above the deities, nothing can be there. No one can be placing their foot above the deities. Like you see in most temples, they have the domes. So nothing crosses that place, because you don't cross over the deities in any way. Prabhupada said once, you don't even step on the shadow of Tulsi Devi. So this is how devotee sees things. You understand what I'm saying, or you're confused? What's on top of here, I don't want to know. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to know. But even in Prabhupada's room, which was on top of the deities, but there was right next to where he was sitting, literally right next to his sitting place, there was a dome, which was right over the deities. So there was no question of it. It was just a little marble dome, right, that we saw. It was just like this wide, but right next to his desk. So this was the situation that Srila Prabhupada had there. And he had to do everything himself. He would go to the printers. He would have to buy the paper. He would have to do everything. And everything. Nothing was simple. He didn't have money. He could only stay there because someone was paying his rent for him. At that time, it was just a few rupees a month. Just like Radha Damodar Temple. What was the first monthly rate? You remember? 2 rupees. It was 2 rupees a month for 2 rooms at Radha Damodar Temple. Quite a bit more now. We're still renting those rooms. It's much more than 2 rupees a month. So anyway, that was being paid for by a friend. But while we were there, we found out different things that people had researched over the time. Everyone, how much they loved Srila Prabhupada. He became the friend of everyone there. They all knew him. The Swami, the Bengali Swami. He was known as the Bengali Swami, because this was in Delhi. And even the children, they would come and see him. And it was mentioned, and of course, much, much later now, they're all, much, much older. But they all remember those days when Prabhupada was there. And Prabhupada had given the different children, he would give them all nicknames. And sometimes they would come and help. Yeah, they would help Srila Prabhupada. So in so many ways, everyone was prepared to do something. And then different times he went to Juhu. This is where Sumati Murarji, she had her house there in Juhu. Juhu, for the most part, was just a little fishing village. But it was a beautiful area right by the beach, south of Mumbai, much south of Mumbai. But it wasn't a very popular place. Anyway, a few things happened. One was Prabhupada said, while he was going to see Sumati Murarji at different times, he saw this piece of land. Way back then, 1965, he saw this piece of land and he thought this would be a nice place for a temple. This was before any temples were there. Prabhupada had a vision of what he was going to do, and he thought this would be a nice place for a temple. And then he went to Sumati Murarji, they had the biggest shipping company there in India. Big, so many ships. Cargo ships they were doing, and he approached her for a passage. Had to get free passage to go to America. And of course, she didn't think she said no. She said, you try to get there, you're probably going to die on the way. Because she saw he was 70 years old at the time. He was just So she wasn't, even though she was pacifying him, one of her right-hand man, he said to him, no, he can't. We can't give him passage. He's not even going to make it to America. But Prabhupada kept asking and asking, he would come back. And then, of course, he befriended her secretary, who approached Sumati and said, no, he's very sincere. He's very sincere. He's very determined to do this. So finally she relented. And that's when he boarded, of course, the Jaladuta. So that was back, we arrived here, the date was September 17th. And the passage was altogether, I think, 37 days across. There was no flying there at that time, 1965. It was aboard the Jaladuta. And it took some 37 days to go from Calcutta, then it went down to Kochi, and then it went around. And those waters, not so good. And then it entered the Atlantic Ocean. And of course the Atlantic Ocean in that area was known for not being a very peaceful ocean. And Prabhupada mentioned that. He kept a diary, always kept a diary. From the time he left India, he was keeping a diary of everything he was doing. And in the diary, he mentioned how he had become seasick. Any of you have ever been in the ocean on any kind of a vessel, the possibility of becoming seasick, and it's a really nasty thing. I've had it happen a few times. Once was a long time ago, and we were in a little 25, 30-foot ship, boat, whatever you want to call it. And I remember going out to the point where you didn't see anything but water. And when that happens, your whole mind starts to act. And then those waves come, those waves, and So Prabhupada went through this for days and days, until finally it got to the point. What happened? He had a heart attack. And then he had another heart attack. And at that point, although he was writing in his diary, every day he would write in his diary what was going on. But then there's a section in his diary, he just drew a line. That was more than a week. Not eating, not doing anything. Just trying to get to America to follow his spiritual master's orders. So then finally, he said he had a dream. You know what that dream is? Anyone remember the dream? All you people need to study these things, Prabhupada. Not just that I should know these things. You all should know the struggle Srila Prabhupada went through so that we could have very nice, easygoing life here in Krishna consciousness. Wasn't easy. But he had a dream, and in the dream, he was in a boat. And who else was in the boat with him? All the 10 incarnations. And they were all rowing the boat. They were rowing the boat for him. And when he got up from that dream, he could understand that Krishna had taken control. And he thought everything is going to... Then he understood everything was going to be all right. He had passed a very big challenge on the way to America. And then after that, the rest of the trip, which was another few weeks, the captain and the captain's wife, who was also on the Jaladuta, this cargo ship, they said that they never saw such a peaceful ocean. The whole ocean just became peaceful for the whole rest of the journey. And Prabhupada says that the captain's wife, she said to him, "You please come with us." She said, "This is very unique." She said, "You should come with us." Even they could recognize what Prabhupada was doing, and that Krishna was in control. And from that time, he used to cook. And of course, he would cook for everyone, the captain, his wife, all these different people. So that was all on the way coming here 60 years ago. And then, of course, in a few days, we're celebrating that anniversary when Prabhupada hit Boston Harbor. And he touched down here, and they got off. And what was one of the first things he saw? Became part of our whole Krishna consciousness movement, right? One word. What was the word? He saw it in an advertisement. Unalloyed. Unalloyed steel. What does unalloyed mean? It means not mixed with anything else. Not mixed with anything else. So that became a word that Prabhupada used very often. That devotional service, unalloyed. It's not mixed with anything else. Only desire is to serve Krishna. Unalloyed, has no other mixture to try to get anything. So Prabhupada saw that. He saw another thing, I believe, when it went to New York. and it was from a paint company, I believe Sherman Williams. I remember that time because this was back in the 60s, and they had an advertisement, and one of the things, they had their can of paint, and it was covering the globe. Their paint was covering the globe. So Prabhupada also saw that, covering the entire world. So from the beginning, he had that vision. Not that it was just going there, beginning and ending in New York. It was just the beginning of Krishna consciousness being going all around the world. So many things we would hear. I was sitting with someone, and they said, one time on the bench, and the person said, "How many temples do you have?" And he said, "Oh, there's so many temples, but they haven't manifest yet." But Prabhupada had a very strong desire, and Krishna fulfilled the desire of his pure devotee. So this is why we're all here at this point, so many years later, 60 years later, all by the fulfilling desire of Srila Prabhupada. So then he got to Butler, PA, his sponsor. He stayed there. He stayed there for some days. He said, but it wasn't easy. He said it was difficult. What would happen, he said, when he opened up the refrigerator, there was meat in it. Imagine Prabhupada seeing meat. Huh? Dead bodies in the refrigerator. He said, but what could I do? And neither did he chastise them and say, oh, what are you doing? He just accepted this is the condition he was in. But then soon after, he got a room in where? The YMCA. And then he would walk back and forth, and he would do the cooking there. And the Agarwal family, they were very happy Prabhupada was cooking, because his cooking was fantastic. And they probably hadn't tasted anything like that since coming to America. So Prabhupada would cook. We saw the picture, they had the little child. Prabhupada was just always accommodating to everyone as he worked to fulfill his mission. He also told a story when he was using the bathroom. And we know, I've often told, when Prabhupada, wherever he went, Prabhupada always lived the same, just like in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, he just had a cushion on the floor, and in front of him, little table. Wherever he came in America, he didn't have big living rooms with couches and sofas, table, chairs, television. It was the same wherever he went. A cushion on the floor with a little desk in front of him. And the lighting, just a little lamp so he could do his translating work. This is his lifestyle everywhere. He wasn't interested. We say some beautiful places Prabhupada lived. We were just in England, Bhaktivedanta Manor. Such a nice place. Prabhupada wasn't interested. If the sun was out, he'd go outside and sit under the tree, chant japa, read his books, have me read his books. So this is what he encouraged us to do. And then some years later, he went back to Juhu. This was 1972. And that piece of land that he looked at 7 years before, he bought that piece of land, that very same place. We also know the Chaupati Temple was an area where Srila Prabhupada also went and thought, nice place for a temple. There's a temple there. So this is the power of the pure devotee. He has desires, Krishna fulfills those desires. Pure desires of the pure devotee. And Krishna fulfilled them. And then finally, he wound up where? Tompkins Square Park. And we say that's where it all began, Tompkins Square Park. You'll see videos, early videos. the devotees chanting there. And it was simple. He didn't have a band behind him. There weren't any instruments behind him. You'll hear two things in the early days. Didn't even have a mridanga. I had that little bongo. I mentioned that the other day. That bongo is in New Vrindavan, in Prabhupada's palace, in a little case there in the palace. That mridanga that was first being banged on when they were chanting. And then, of course, had the little hand cymbals. And Prabhupada sat under that tree in New York City. There's a big plaque there, that tree, New York City, right? You've seen that tree. Of course you have. Your father has brought you everywhere. Saying this is where the Hare Krishna movement began. Just by one devotee, pure devotee, chanting purely. And so many people became attracted. Not by instruments, but by the pure chanting. And you'll see those early people. Some of them you'll see Achyutananda and Hayagriva and Kirtananda and Brahmananda. And they would all just sit there. And Prabhupada would chant. Gradually they started to respond. And Brahmananda tells the story, what happened. So Prabhupada would chant 2-3 hours straight every day. He would go to the park, chant for 3 hours or so in the afternoon. And these young devotees were not initiated. They were just attracted by this person, this Swami from India. And he was chanting. And Brahmananda said one day he just became inspired. And he started dancing. Got up and started dancing. A couple others, they followed, and they just started going around in a circle and dancing. And Brahmananda said he thought once he stood up and started dancing, he couldn't stop. So he'd have to dance for 2 or 3 hours straight as they're going around, chanting Hare Krishna. But this was Prabhupada's method. Our kirtan. Wasn't everybody sitting on the floor like this, singing and dancing. Prabhupada said this was our yoga. He said we don't need any other kind of yoga. He said our yoga is dancing. And what happens, he said, when you clap your hands? All your lines change. Those who know palmistry, astrology, they read the lines on your hand, will tell you what's going to happen in the future. If they're really, really good, they're going to tell you even how many times you're going to be married, how many children you're going to have, when you're going to die. All this is there. But Prabhupada said, simply by chanting and dancing, clapping those hands, the lines, even the lines, it means your whole life will change. It's the only thing you can change. Prabhupada said, he would say different things sometimes, very startling. Sometimes I see these people jogging, running, especially people even in their 60s, 70s sometime, and you see them jogging. Prabhupada said, when you come into this world, you have so many breaths. You can't change it. So you got to be careful all the running you're doing. You're actually not improving your life. You're shortening your life, I read so many silly things. I read too much. I read how every Coca-Cola you drink takes 8 minutes off your life. Everything's bad for you that we put, all the air we breathe now, the water whatever we drink, everything's reducing our life. But the chanting, he said, that can actually increase your life. Otherwise, you have so many breaths. He also said, you come into this life, you can't change what you're going to get. In other words, materially. How much money you're going to make in this life. It's already determined from your previous life. Otherwise, how does someone come in? One person comes in now, used to be millionaires. Now you're billionaires. It's not that they're 1,000 times smarter than the next person. It's karma. Another person can work so hard just for a few dollars a day. What's the difference? This is one thing when I was growing up, you could never understand. Why is people suffering? Why is a child suffering? They're innocent. No, not innocent. Previous life is there. Krishna consciousness made everything so clear. I grew up in Christianity. We never understood. We could never understand why one person seems to be enjoying happy life, lots of money, nice family, another one's struggling. All because of previous life. So he said you can't change what you get. You can decide how you want to make your living. But what you're going to get, that's already determined. We see that also in people's lives, how things can change just like that. Bad to good, good to bad. So all these things are going on. Anyway, we have a big, big weekend ahead. Many devotees coming. I have many God brothers and God sisters. They're going to tell you so many wonderful things about Srila Prabhupada and what he did and how everything is going on. So we hope all of you will attend. It starts Friday, I believe, 4 p.m. Is that right? Yes, 4 p.m. on Friday, then goes on Saturday. And then Sunday we have the big boat festival, right? Going to that place, Boston Harbor, where Srila Prabhupada, very special place, Tirtha. I say this, Boston's a very special place. First place Prabhupada entered, placed his lotus feet to change this world. So take advantage of it over the next few days. Be part of it. I came here. We came here from Vrindavan, India. From New Delhi, we came here just to be here for this weekend. It was a very special weekend. That is anniversary weekend. And if you come and attend, you get special mercy. Every day we're getting mercy. When you come to these special days, festival days, anniversary days, you get special mercy. 100 times, 1,000 times the mercy that you would get on a normal day. So take advantage, please, everyone, and come. Anyone has any questions at this time? We can have a few minutes for questions and answers. Comment. Yes, Prabhu.
I don't know if this is appropriate. If it's not, you may not answer.
Behind me. Thank you. Yes, go on.
Because I mean, I remember hearing the statement saying like familiarity breeds contempt. Like if someone is like, I remember that also reading that there were devotees who left movement although they were so close to Prabhupada, and it seems to be contradictory. You know, like how it's how is that possible? But for you, you were so close to Prabhupada, you could start feeling like he's one of the humans.
Just
us.
like anyone else.
Right.
Yes.
So have you ever had anything, that you have to internally somehow fight inside and like kind of think about it, feel?
I was fortunate in that I always understood I was very, very fallen. And I always saw that Prabhupada, everything he was telling us to do, he was doing it. So as we say in America, he was the real deal. He was walking the talk, not just telling. And we see that in so many, Prabhupada would say, bogey yogis, or so-called sadhus. They preach so many things, but they're doing so many things behind the scenes. I was with Prabhupada behind the scenes all the time, and I saw he was pure. He had, like I said, he sat on a cushion on the floor, He sat on the floor, this little straw mat, a little table there, taking prasadam. Didn't have big dining areas, chandeliers. Never asked for anything. He never asked. He went through probably 15 servants. Because as you say, sometimes familiarity breeds contempt, and one reason or another people would leave. And some of it was just that. Even Prabhupada said that they think he's just this old man. He's eating, he's sleeping, he's passing urine. He's doing everything like me. What's the difference? But I saw the difference. He spread Krishna consciousness all around the world. Nobody else had ever done that. And in a sense, I feel it protected me, that I saw things in that way. I wasn't, I've never been a very philosophical person. Well, I'm philosophical, but I mean, I never had, as Prabhupada would say, over-intelligent. That we also saw with Prabhupada. I mentioned that the other morning about Sanskrit. Some of them would learn a little Sanskrit, and then they would even think, oh, Prabhupada's not translating this properly. Because according to the strict definition in Sanskrit dictionary, words like this. But Prabhupada's process, everything was based on devotion to Krishna. So everything he would translate in that way. If you read his books, you'll even see word-to-word translation, and sometimes you'll see the word-to-word, and then you'll see the translation itself, and it doesn't go along with the word-to-word. But as Prabhupada said, every word, Krishna was in every word. Like he said, there's hundreds of translations of Bhagavad Gita. But how many devotees were made? Not one devotee made. Prabhupada did Bhagavad Gita as it is, and now we see millions of devotees all over the world because it's through devotion. Did you have something? Does that make sense? So I saw things, and of course, even Prabhupada said is one disciple, and one of many disciples. When Prabhupada said they never went to the moon, that was a big one. That was really big. There were so many. Well, I saw it on television. Prabhupada said when I was a boy, I think it was in the 30s, the very first King Kong movie came out. Well, he wasn't a boy. He was a young man by then. But he said, and I don't even think that was a talkie. I think it was but there was King Kong on the Empire State Building. Was King Kong ever on the Empire State Building? But he saw it on television. And Prabhupada said to me one day, I had a servant, he said. And when I said they didn't go to the moon's a heavenly planet. He said, I couldn't go to America without a visa. Well, you know that. If you're coming from another country, just to come here, you need a visa. And to get that visa is not so easy. He said, what's the question of going to a heavenly planet without the proper credentials? But he said, I had a servant. He said he couldn't accept it. And he left. And he looked at me. He said, you're not going to leave, are you? Because he was translating the 5th canto at the time, talking about the moon. So he was looking at me. He was concerned because it came up again. Some years later, he said, Śrutakīrti, you're not going to leave, are you? I said, no, Prabhupada, that doesn't. Because these things didn't matter to me. As Prabhupada said, these things don't matter to a devotee. He said, Srimad Bhagavatam's not there to explain the process of creation. He said that would take so many volumes and volumes. He said the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to develop your love of Krishna. And he said it just gives minute details on the process of creation, the planetary systems, the hellish planets, all these things. He says, but it would take volumes. He said, but that's not our interest. Our interest is just develop our love of Krishna. And to do that, reading his books, and that's what he said. He said, if you have any doubts, he said, you have to continue to read again and again and again. And each time you read, the more realization you'll get. And you can say, well, maybe. But you have to do it. It was another thing back in those days. We would say, the proof of the pudding, you got to taste it. I can tell you it's very, very tasty. I could tell you chocolate mousse, very yummy. But unless you taste it, what do you know about it? Nothing. So the same thing, Krishna consciousness. you have to engage in the process, other than saying, nah, that's nonsense. Prabhupada say it's scientific. If you do it, the result will be there. So that's this process. But yeah, I've been fortunate. And I've also, Krishna's put me in a position, just like Prabhupada, taking everything away. Somehow or other I've just wound up in Vrindavan by Krishna's mercy after all these years, and by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So if we have a desire, just a little desire, it can get fanned by the spiritual master, so we can continue. So you need to be determined. You've got to have some sincerity. And you've got to accept your spiritual master. He's all in all. And that's what I said when Prabhupada had his 2 guns, right, as a child. And I said when he came to America, what did he have? He had his 2 guns. He had the holy name, and he had the order, complete faith in the holy name and complete faith in the order of his spiritual master. Those 2 things, that's all that's required. With those 2 things, if you have complete faith, you can do anything. And you understand it's all coming through the mercy of the spiritual master. And if you think, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, then everything will go away eventually. You can do it for a while, but without that surrender and without that faith in your spiritual master and the service attitude to your spiritual master, and considering yourself a fool before your spiritual master, doesn't mean you're foolish, but you considering yourself a fool means I accept everything you tell me. I don't know better. As soon as you think you know better, very quickly you'll see your exit door will be there. Anybody else have a... Yes?
So, do you think they went to the moon? Do you think they went to the moon?
No, he said we never went to the moon. I accept that, yeah. It became difficult even last year or 2 because India sent someone. Even the devotees, they all got so excited. But Prabhupada said it's a heavenly planet. According to Shastra, it's a heavenly planet. So they certainly didn't, or he said even if they went, although he said they didn't go, but he said even if they went, where were they?
Rahu.
Rahu? Like that. Could have been Rahu, the one that covers the moon. So all these things are there. We see, there's so many things if you look, talk about the moon and if you've seen that little spaceship that they show on that sandy thing, you think that thing made it to the moon? Looks like it has Reynolds wrap as a covering and everything. Anyway, these are not the most important things. Yes, Vishaka.
At that time, Srila Prabhupada was translating 5th canto.
Yeah.
And there was a description of all the planetary systems.
Yes.
And then it says that the moon is further than the sun. So to get to the moon, you have to pass the sun. And sun is the hottest planet. Before you will get to the moon, you would burn. So you will never get to the moon. And that's why he said, now I'm convinced they never went to the moon.
Yeah. She's saying and that was when we were in 1975 in Perth, Australia.
Are you saying you think they faked the moon landing?
Huh?
Are you saying you think they faked the moon landing?
Many people say that, not just me.
How do you think they faked it?
How? Haven't you seen movies ever?
Yeah, but they didn't have that kind of technology.
Huh?
They didn't have that kind of technology.
They didn't?
They just didn't look that
Actually, this is not what I want to get into, but actually you'll
We
see.
want to just talk about Shastra, not about technology.
But even when it was going on, technically, when they showed different things, it was done on Earth showing you, what's the word they used? What it would look like, because they didn't have the ability to show it. So they literally had a studio. That's accepted that they did it to show the what it was going to be. That was readily accepted. You know, if you want to study up on it, you can study up on it. But yes,
apologize, but I respect it.
that's okay. But see, that's the difference. Just like Prabhupada, whatever his spiritual master said, he accepted. So in the same way, what we hear from Prabhupada, we accept. You have to see, he came to America, first person ever, fulfilled the desire of Lord Chaitanya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his spiritual master, literally spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So we accept that he's pure devotee of Krishna, came from the spiritual world to fulfill the desires of Lord Chaitanya. So that's what matters. What can I say?
It's not like I'm a fully enlightened being who can completely understand everything, but
No,
I don't know.
exactly. And I don't know either. But our interest, as Prabhupada said, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is so we can develop our love of God. This is our interest. Huh? And if there's something we don't understand, there's so many things you're going to read in Srimad Bhagavatam that seem impossible. How many cows did Nanda Maharaj have? Huh? Do you know? 900,000. Can you explain that? Exactly. How many wives did Krishna marry?
16,100.
Do you know that? 16,108. And each one was provided with a palace.
And
And each-
Krishna expanded himself for each wife.
He was with each one. And each one had 10 sons. So all these things are beyond our comprehension. The whole spiritual world is beyond our comprehension. But you're here for what reason?
Because I like kirtan.
That's it?
That's what got me in the door.
No, we all like kirtan. Why do we like kirtan?
It's because it makes me happy and feel.
But why does it make you happy?
I can't really explain it.
I mean, rather than a Beatles song.
Something about the vibration.
There you go. The sound vibration. And what is that sound vibration?
Krishna.
It's the name of Krishna. And what is the difference between Krishna's name and Krishna?
None.
Nothing. Are you, what is your background? Are you Christian?
Born Jewish.
Okay. So then you're familiar with the Old Testament? Yes? Okay. Does it describe anything about chanting God's name in the Old Testament?
We avoid saying the Hebrew name of God, actually.
It says the holy name, God's name is hallowed. It's holy. So that's why you like the chanting. It's Krishna himself. It's not different. And that's why here, 50 years later, I'm singing the same song. Not that, if you look at the top Billboard 100, it's changing every week. What you like this week, next week is throw it away. But the holy name isn't like that because it's holy, hallowed. It's literally God's name. So this is what's important. And this is why you like kirtan. This is why kirtan, everyone now around the world are liking kirtan. Because it's a transcendental sound vibration. It's not part of this world. It's from the spiritual atmosphere. And that's not just in Krishna consciousness. Any bona fide religion, Prabhupada said you can chant any name of God. It's transcendental. But we follow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who 500 years ago appeared, Krishna himself, and promoted the Hare Krishna mantra as the mantra to be chanted so that at the end of this life we can go back home, back to Godhead. That's Hare Krishna mantra. So we concentrate on chanting Hare Krishna. But Prabhupada said all of God's names are transcendental. And you'll see that. I know, I saw in Christianity, there were certain things you chant. I can't think of them right now, but they continue to be popular year after year, generation after generation, because they're not mundane sounds. Okay. One more question? No, we can finish here. It's 8 o'clock. I think we can finish here. So again, I hope to see you. Oh, and I have a little something. We have the 60th anniversary, but for those of you who are interested, there's 50th anniversary. These are Srila Prabhupada's slippers he wore 50 years ago on a Japan Airlines flight. And Japan Airlines was kind enough in those days, and they still do it. They give you slippers and headphones and earplugs. So Prabhupada wore these 50 years ago this month. So anyone, if you come up here, if you like, you can get the transcendental lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada just like this on your head. Like this very intelligent Mataji here. See, this is devotee. Hare Krishna. You're welcome. One more time. Okay. This is our interest. See, this is our interest. Hare Krishna. All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
And please don't touch Śrutakīrti Prabhu's feet. Please don't touch the feet.
Hare Krishna. Okay, here is, yes. If you do not know anything about the Śrutakīrti Prabhu, let me introduce you. He is one of the fortunate disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who had the rare privilege of serving as Srila Prabhupada's personal servant from 1972 to 1975. During those years, he closely assisted Srila Prabhupada in his worldwide travels, daily routines, and intimate services, thus gaining a unique insight into Srila Prabhupada's instructions, moods, and dealings. He has written few books. So one of the books is What is the Difficulty? So please take this book, and if you want to have a signature, you can have that opportunity right now. So now what we will do, please come forward. We will chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And please do not go. We are celebrating Srila Prabhupada's 60th anniversary of his arrival in USA. This weekend, we are going to feed almost 10,000 plates of prasadam. So it's a huge, humongous amount of cooking is going on in the kitchen, and we would love to have you for the festival.